Well, that takes us to the way we got around to you, and that is the president and Robert Mueller. President yesterday sounded like he said what he meant and knew what he was saying and meant what he said. He'd be happy to sit down with Mueller. Ty Cobb seems to be conditioning that a little bit. I suspect, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, I suspect Ty Cobb is just acting in his role appropriately as attorney for the president, trying to put some conditions and trying to make sure everything is okay and kosher before the two men sit down and talk. Does the president really have as much to fear about this interview as a lot of people would have us believe?
I can completely understand why the president's lawyers are saying what they're saying, because even though they know that the president will, in the end, interview with Mueller, it would be both political suicide and he would lose constitutionally if he refused. As the lawyer, Cobb wants to place conditions, he wants to limit it as best he can. So I don't blame him for trying to walk back what President Trump said. But in the end, Mr. Cobb knows that President Trump will have to interview with the special counsel, Bob Mueller.
Well, it's interesting because the president, in his off-the-cuff remarks yesterday, and basically repeated what he has said time and time again. There was no collusion. There was no conspiracy. None of that went on, period. So if he believes that, and if that is the truth, what is it, John, that he would have to fear by sitting down with Mueller or Mueller's investigators and telling them that?
I think you're exactly right. I think actually President Trump should welcome the interview because his interest is to get it over and done with as fast as possible. Mueller is actually helping him in this regard. I know many conservatives are attacking Mueller, but actually Mueller, it looks like this could be done in about a year, which is incredibly fast. That's almost like light speed for a federal investigation. Less than a year. So President Trump should actually be happy that it's moving this quickly. Now, the reason why President Trump might be worried and why his lawyers are worried is not the underlying crime. I agree with you. I don't see any facts that would give rise to any federal conspiracy charge. Collusion's not actually a crime. Conspiracy is. I don't see any facts for that yet. The thing that Cobb and the other lawyers would be worried about is that President Trump might commit perjury in some inadvertent way by contradicting what other witnesses have told Mueller's investigation already. This is commonly called a perjury trap. And I can understand why they would be worried about that and trying to narrow what President Trump's asked about to make the odds of that happening less.
Yeah, but just to play the devil's advocate here, let me. Why is it that the benefit of the doubt doesn't pertain to the president? They're doing an interview with him. He's speaking the truth. We're going to assume, for the purposes of this conversation, he says the absolute truth. If what he says contradicts or is in conflict with something someone else said, why is it the perjury charge laying on him and not on whoever else might be out there contradicting him?
Oh, I agree. That's definitely the case. I mean, suppose President Trump gives conflicting testimony with regard to something Paul Manafort says.
Right.
I personally would agree with, I would believe Trump instead of Manafort. But it's just the mere fact that there could be a contradiction is what worries lawyers, keeps them up late at night, because that would give Mueller the potential grounds to pursue obstruction of justice in some way. Remember, that's what eventually President Clinton was charged with, was committing perjury, even though that had to go.
But John, that was different there because, I mean, whether you think the prosecution was appropriate or not, he demonstrably lied. He did have sexual relations with that woman. I mean,
Yes. I agree. I just think that the president and his lawyers, they just want to be careful to prevent anything like that even happening. I agree. The best thing for Trump to do is come in and say, there was no conspiracy. I never communicated with any Russians. We didn't conspire to steal Hillary Clinton's emails. The whole thing just didn't happen. And then the only thing Mueller can go for, obstruction of justice.
Well, you took me to my next question. And it was really interesting because yesterday, in a kind of off-the-cuff way, he commented on obstruction of justice in the sense of, so I'm fighting back, that's obstruction of justice. There are a lot of people that would have us believe that because the president is protesting his innocence and fighting back against an investigation into him, that he is somehow obstructing justice as opposed to just defending himself.
I agree. Actually, I think that there's not a serious claim that the things the president is saying in public, criticizing the investigation or criticizing Democrats or the flimsiness of the evidence, I don't think that's grounds for obstruction. The only real claim, and I think it's very complicated, but the only real claim would be that firing Jim Comey or trying to get Sessions to stay involved and not appoint independent counsel, that's obstruction. Personally, as a constitutional matter, I don't think that's obstruction of justice because President Trump actually never ordered anyone to stop an investigation. He had plenty of grounds to fire Jim Comey.
Right.
It has nothing to do with this investigation.
No, it hardly ended the investigation to the president. And John, we're out of time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.